Welcome to TrueCrime Unveiled Podcast. Dive deep into the mysteries that captivate us.
If you appreciate this episode, please consider liking and subscribing to support us. The turquoise waters of Aruba, typically associated with paradise and escape, became the backdrop for a chilling unsolved mystery, the disappearance of Natalee Holloway. In May 2005, the 18-year-old high school graduate embarked on a celebratory trip with her classmates, a carefree adventure marking the end of their school years. Little did anyone know, this trip would transform into a nightmare, catapulting Natalee's name into headlines worldwide and leaving a lingering question that haunts us to this day. What happened to Natalee Holloway?
Natalee's story began like so many others. A promising young woman with her life ahead of her. She excelled academically, participated in school activities, and held aspirations for the future. Her trip to Aruba was intended as a final hurrah before embarking on the next chapter of her life, a chapter that tragically never began. This seemingly ordinary graduation trip quickly spiraled into a vortex of unanswered questions, conflicting accounts, and a relentless search for truth that continues even now. The last confirmed sighting of Natalee was in the early hours of May 30, 2005, leaving a Carlos and Charlie's bar with Joran van Sloot and two brothers, Deepak and Satish Kalpoe. This seemingly insignificant detail became the crux of the investigation, the starting point of a tangled web of speculation, suspicion, and dead ends. The initial reports painted a picture of a carefree evening, but the hours that followed remained shrouded in mystery, the pieces of the puzzle refusing to fit together, forming an incomplete and unsettling picture. Initially, the focus was on finding a missing teenager, a relatively common occurrence. However, as days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, the investigation intensified. The lack of concrete evidence, coupled with the conflicting statements from the last people to see Natalee alive, transformed the search from a rescue mission to a potential criminal investigation. The beautiful island paradise became the setting for an increasingly grim search, the tropical landscape now imbued with an unsettling sense of dread and unanswered questions. Less than person 1 greater than.
Before the vanishing act that gripped the world, Natalee Holloway lived a life familiar to many American teenagers. She resided in the comfortable, suburban enclave of Mountain Brook, Alabama, a place characterized by tree-lined streets, spacious homes, and a strong sense of community. Imagine a place where neighbors knew each other, front porches welcomed evening conversations, and the rhythm of life moved at a slower, more deliberate pace. Natalee, an honors student, was on the cusp of graduation, celebrating the culmination of years of hard work with a class trip to Aruba. She was known for her bright smile, infectious energy, and active involvement in school activities, particularly dance. The trip to Aruba was a highly anticipated event, a reward for academic achievement, and a chance to create lasting memories with friends before embarking on the next chapter of their lives. The island, famed for its pristine beaches and vibrant nightlife, promised an escape to paradise. No one could have foreseen the dark turn of events that would soon unfold, shattering the tranquility and leaving a community in disbelief. Aruba, in 2005, presented itself as a tranquil and safe vacation destination. The island boasted a low crime rate, especially against tourists, making it an appealing choice for families and student groups. The local economy thrived on tourism, with a focus on hospitality and ensuring visitors felt secure and welcomed. The image of Aruba was one of carefree relaxation, an idyllic escape from the pressures of everyday life. This image was drastically contrasted by the events surrounding Natalee's disappearance. The island, normally bathed in sunshine and known for its clear turquoise waters, became the backdrop of an international mystery, its tranquil image forever stained by the unanswered questions surrounding Natalee's fate. The contrast between the perceived safety of the island and the sudden disappearance of an American teenager created a jarring dissonance, Capturing the attention of media outlets worldwide and leaving a chilling effect on the island's reputation.
Natalee's life was filled with the typical pursuits of a teenager on the verge of adulthood: school dances, friendships, and the excitement of impending graduation. She was a popular student, known for her friendly demeanor and involvement in extracurricular activities. Photographs from that time depict a vibrant young woman with a promising future, surrounded by friends and family. These images now serve as poignant reminders of a life tragically cut short, leaving behind a void in the lives of those who knew and loved her. The contrast between these images of youthful exuberance and the grim reality of her disappearance is a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the suddenness with which tragedy can strike. The vibrant, smiling face captured in those photographs became a symbol of the search for answers, a symbol of a life full of potential that was tragically lost.
Mountain Brook, Alabama, a close-knit community where Natalee grew up, was deeply shaken by her disappearance. This affluent suburb of Birmingham was known for its low crime rate and strong sense of community. The news of Natalee's vanishing sent shockwaves through the town, shattering the sense of security and leaving residents grappling with fear and disbelief. Candlelight vigils were held, prayers were offered, and the community rallied together to support the Holloway family. The disappearance transformed Mountain Brook from a quiet, affluent suburb into the epicenter of a global mystery, its name forever linked to the tragic story of a young woman who vanished without a trace. The search for Natalee became a shared mission, uniting the community in grief and determination.
The last confirmed sighting of Natalee was leaving the Carlos and Charlie's bar with Joran and Sloot and the Kalpoe brothers, Deepak and Satish. They were seen getting into a silver Honda, reportedly the one Joran had borrowed from his mother. This places Natalee with them around 1:15 a.m. on May 30, 2005. The initial reports filed by the Kalpoe brothers stated they dropped Natalee off at her hotel, the Holiday Inn, claiming she stumbled and fell near the entrance. They insisted they saw her get up and walk inside. This detail, seemingly insignificant at the time, later became a focal point of the investigation. Did anyone at the hotel see her? Security footage? Anything to corroborate their story? The answer, frustratingly, was no. The Holiday Inn, bustling with vacationers, presented its own set of challenges for the investigation. The sheer number of guests coming and going, combined with limited security camera coverage in those days, made tracking individuals difficult. While the Kalpoe brothers' statement suggested a seemingly ordinary conclusion to the evening, a slightly clumsy return to the hotel, it lacked any independent confirmation. No witnesses stepped forward to confirm seeing Natalee stumble or enter the hotel alone.
This absence of corroboration began to cast a shadow over their narrative. The peaceful image of a young woman simply returning to her room after a night out began to fray around the edges. Something felt amiss. Natalee's friends, who had traveled with her for their graduation trip, reported her missing later that day when she failed to show up for their flight home. This seemingly simple fact, a missed flight, set off a chain of events that would transform a carefree vacation into an international nightmare. Imagine the rising panic among her friends as they searched the hotel, called her room, and finally contacted the local authorities. Their initial concern, perhaps that she had simply overslept or was enjoying a last-minute excursion, quickly turned into a chilling realization that something was terribly wrong. The ordinary had become extraordinary, and a subtle sense of dread began to permeate the idyllic island setting. The Aruban landscape, typically associated with tranquility and breathtaking beauty, became the backdrop for a frantic search. Imagine the stark contrast. Pristine beaches, turquoise waters, and lush vegetation juxtaposed with the grim reality of a missing person. Volunteers combed the island, searching the coastline, the rugged interior, and even the surrounding waters. The vibrant colors of the Caribbean seemed to lose some of their vibrancy, replaced by a growing sense of unease. The shadow of Natalee's disappearance began to stretch across the island, tainting the very air with a sense of mystery and foreboding. The ordinary had become extraordinary, and paradise had become a puzzle. In the early hours of May 30, 2005, Natalee Holloway, a recent high school graduate from Mountain Brook, Alabama, vanished without a trace from the island of Aruba. She was last seen leaving a nightclub called Carlos and Charlie's with Joran and Sloot and two Surinamese brothers, Deepak and Satish Kalpoe. Natalee was on a graduation trip with 124 classmates and 7 chaperones, a celebratory trip that turned into a nightmare. The initial reports painted a picture of a carefree young woman enjoying her last days of freedom before college. However, as hours turned into days and Natalee failed to show up for her flight home, a sense of dread began to permeate the festive atmosphere. The carefree vacation quickly transformed into a desperate search for a missing teenager, a search that would capture international attention and remain shrouded in mystery for years to come. The timeline of Natalee's last known hours is crucial. She was seen leaving the nightclub around 1:30 a.m. with the 3 young men. Witnesses reported seeing Natalee get into a silver Honda, believed to be driven by Joran and Sloot. This is where the confirmed sightings end. The initial investigation by Aruban authorities seemed to focus on the possibility that Natalee had wandered off, or perhaps met with an accident. However, as time passed and no sign of Natalee emerged, suspicion began to fall heavily on the 3 men she was last seen with. The lack of cooperation from these individuals, coupled with conflicting accounts of the night's events,
only fueled the growing suspicion. This lack of initial focus on the three men would later become a point of contention and criticism of the Aruban investigation.
The first significant turning point in the case came when the Kalpoe brothers were arrested on June 5, followed by the arrest of Joran van Sloot shortly after. While their initial stories claimed they dropped Natalee off at her hotel, these accounts quickly unraveled under scrutiny. Inconsistencies and changing narratives cast doubt on their version of events. The search for Natalee intensified, involving hundreds of volunteers, Aruban authorities, and even the FBI. Beaches, landfills, and the surrounding ocean were meticulously combed, but there was no sign of the missing teenager. The lack of physical evidence hampered the investigation, making it difficult to piece together what happened after Natalee left the nightclub. The arrests generated a flurry of media attention, transforming the disappearance of an American teenager into an international incident. The pressure mounted on Aruban authorities to find answers and bring those responsible to justice. Despite the arrests, the investigation was plagued by challenges. The lack of a crime scene, no body recovered, and conflicting witness statements made building a solid case incredibly difficult. Furthermore, the legal systems of Aruba and the United States differ, creating complexities in the investigative process. These early stages of the investigation set the tone for the long and convoluted legal battle that would ensue, a battle that continues to raise questions about the handling of the case and the pursuit of justice for Natalee Holloway. The initial hours following Natalee Holloway's disappearance were a blur of confusion and rising panic. The last confirmed sighting placed her leaving Carlos and Charlie's bar in Orangestad with Joran van Sloot and the Kalpoe brothers, Deepak and Satish. It was around 1:30 a.m. on May 30, 2005. The alarm wasn't raised immediately. Her classmates, assuming she was simply sleeping in after a night out, didn't report her missing until later that morning when she failed to show up for their scheduled departure flight. This delay, though understandable given the circumstances of a group of teenagers on vacation, would prove crucial. Those precious lost hours would become a recurring theme in the investigation, a frustrating obstacle in piecing together what truly happened to Natalee. The early stages were characterized by a sense of disbelief that something like this could happen to a young American tourist in Aruba, a seemingly safe and idyllic vacation destination. The immediate aftermath was marked by frantic searching and growing dread. Natalee's classmates began their own informal search, retracing their steps from the previous night, asking around, desperately hoping for a simple explanation. Beth Holloway Twitty, Natalee's mother, arrived in Aruba within hours of learning of her daughter's disappearance. Her arrival injected a renewed sense of urgency into the search efforts. She immediately began working with local authorities and organizing volunteer search parties. The FBI also became involved, dispatching agents to assist with the investigation. As the hours ticked by with no sign of Natalee, the initial optimism that she might have simply wandered off or overslept began to fade. The atmosphere on the island shifted, the carefree vacation vibe replaced by an unsettling tension. The unanswered questions multiplied. Where did Natalee go after leaving the bar? Who was the last person to see her? And what were the circumstances surrounding her disappearance? The mystery deepened, casting a long shadow over the island paradise. The local Aruban authorities initiated their investigation, focusing on the three young men last seen with Natalee. Joran van Sloot, an 18-year-old Dutch national living on the island, quickly became a key person of interest. He and the Kalpoe brothers provided conflicting accounts of their interactions with Natalee that night, further fueling suspicion. The search expanded beyond the immediate vicinity of the bar, encompassing the coastline, surrounding areas, and even the ocean. Divers scoured the waters, while volunteers combed the beaches and scrubland. The media descended upon Aruba, transforming the island into the center of a global media frenzy. The intense scrutiny put immense pressure on the Aruban authorities to find answers, to provide some semblance of closure for Natalee's distraught family and a worried public. The beautiful beaches and turquoise waters, once symbols of relaxation and escape, now served as a haunting backdrop to a desperate search for a missing girl. The growing fear surrounding Natalee's disappearance was palpable. The details emerging from the investigation were troubling. The conflicting stories and lack of concrete evidence only deepened the sense of mystery. The media attention, while crucial in spreading awareness, also contributed to the growing anxiety. Speculation ran rampant. Theories were debated and dissected, and rumors swirled through the island and beyond. The focus shifted from finding Natalee safe and sound to uncovering what happened to her and who was responsible. The idyllic image of Aruba was tarnished, replaced by the unsettling reality of a young woman vanishing without a trace.
The investigation was becoming increasingly complex, a puzzle with missing pieces and a growing number of unanswered questions. The search continued, but hope was beginning to dwindle, replaced by a chilling premonition that this story wouldn't have a happy ending. Let's delve deeper into Joran van der Sloot's psychological profile. Outwardly, he presented a facade of normalcy. He was a seemingly well-adjusted young man from a respectable family, attending an international school, and engaging in typical teenage activities. He excelled academically and athletically, particularly in tennis.
However, beneath this veneer of normalcy, a darker, more complex personality appears to have existed. Reports suggest a penchant for gambling, a habit potentially fostered by the casinos readily accessible in Aruba. This gambling, coupled with alleged drug use, could have contributed to impulsive behaviors and a disregard for consequences. It's crucial to consider how these factors might have intertwined with the events of that night. Did the pressure of potential gambling debts or the influence of substances cloud his judgment? These questions are vital in understanding the motivations behind his actions, or at least the circumstances surrounding Natalee's disappearance. Indeed, the contradictions in van der Sloot's personality are striking. On one hand, we have the image of a promising young man with a bright future. On the other hand, we see a pattern of deceptive behavior and a disturbing lack of empathy. His changing narratives, the inconsistencies in his statements, and his attempts to mislead investigators all point to a calculated effort to evade responsibility. It's this dichotomy, the charming exterior masking a darker interior, that makes this case so perplexing. We must also consider the cultural context. Aruba's nightlife and the readily available access to alcohol and gambling could have played a role in escalating the situation. Was he accustomed to a certain level of impunity due to his family's social standing? Did this environment contribute to a sense of entitlement or invincibility? These factors, while not excusing his behavior, offer potential insights into the mindset that could have led to such tragic consequences. Precisely. The cultural context is essential. The party atmosphere, the late nights, and the relaxed environment might have created a sense of anonymity and diminished inhibitions. It's also important to consider the psychological impact of the island setting itself. Aruba, a relatively small island, fosters a close-knit community. This can lead to a sense of insularity and, potentially, a belief that one can operate outside the usual boundaries of law and social accountability. Did van der Sloot believe he could get away with something due to the island's close-knit nature, perhaps relying on local connections, or assuming the investigation would be less rigorous? These are speculative, of course, but critical considerations when reconstructing the events and understanding the suspect's psychology.
And let's not forget the psychological impact of the disappearance itself on van der Sloot. While he outwardly maintained his innocence, the immense pressure of the investigation, the media scrutiny, and the global attention undoubtedly took a toll. Did this pressure exacerbate his pre-existing behavioral patterns? Did it contribute to further deceptive tactics as a coping mechanism? The prolonged uncertainty and the constant questioning could have amplified any underlying psychological vulnerabilities, leading to increasingly erratic and inconsistent behavior. It's a complex interplay of personality, environment, and circumstance that requires careful examination. Let's delve into the frustrating and often chaotic nature of the investigation. Authorities faced an immediate hurdle. The crime scene was essentially non-existent. Natalee vanished without a trace from a tourist-heavy area, leaving investigators scrambling to piece together her last known movements. Initial searches focused on the beaches, the hotel area, and nearby waters, but yielded nothing conclusive. The lack of physical evidence hampered the investigation from the outset, forcing reliance on witness testimonies, which, as we know, can be unreliable and often contradictory. This early stage was marked by a sense of urgency, but also a degree of disorganization, as local Aruban authorities and the FBI struggled to coordinate their efforts effectively. This lack of cohesive strategy, particularly in those critical first few days, may have allowed crucial evidence to be overlooked or lost. Furthermore, the involvement of the Holloway family, while understandable, added another layer of complexity to an already delicate situation.
The investigation was further complicated by a series of missed leads and red herrings. One prominent example is the focus on Joran van der Sloot, the last person seen with Natalee. While he became the prime suspect, the initial investigation arguably fixated on him to the exclusion of other potential avenues. This tunnel vision may have caused investigators to miss other clues or persons of interest. Furthermore, the Aruban legal system, different from the American one, presented challenges for the FBI. The Dutch legal system's emphasis on privacy and its different standards for evidence admissibility created friction
and slowed down the process. There were also allegations of corruption within the Aruban police force, which, whether true or not, further eroded public trust in the investigation and fueled speculation of a cover-up. Adding to the anguish and confusion were the periodic appearances of supposed leads and breakthroughs that ultimately proved to be false hope. Several individuals came forward claiming to have information, only to be discredited later. These instances, while potentially well-intentioned in some cases, only served to heighten the emotional roller coaster for Natalee's family and divert resources from more promising lines of inquiry. The media frenzy surrounding the case also contributed to this chaotic atmosphere. The constant speculation and often sensationalized reporting amplified the impact of these false leads,
creating a sense of perpetual anticipation, followed by crushing disappointment. This cycle of hope and despair undoubtedly took a toll on everyone involved, especially the Holloway family.
We also need to address the disturbing element of taunting communications that emerged during the investigation. Joran van der Sloot, even while under suspicion, engaged in behavior that could be interpreted as deliberately provocative. He reportedly made cryptic statements and sent messages that seemed designed to toy with investigators and the Holloway family. One instance involved a purported demand for money in exchange for information about Natalee's remains. This behavior, while not directly contributing to solving the case, certainly added to the psychological torment surrounding the disappearance. It further complicated the public perception of van der Sloot and fueled speculation about his involvement, even in the absence of conclusive physical evidence linking him to the crime. These taunts underscore the complex psychological dynamics at play in this case and highlight the challenges investigators faced in navigating a landscape of misinformation, speculation, and outright manipulation.
The protracted nature of Natalee Holloway's disappearance had a devastating impact on her family. The initial shock and frantic search gave way to a prolonged period of agonizing uncertainty, compounded by the lack of definitive answers. Beth Holloway, Natalee's mother, became the public face of the family's anguish, tirelessly advocating for her daughter and pursuing every possible lead. The years of unanswered questions, coupled with the intense media scrutiny and the frustrating legal battles, undoubtedly took an immense emotional toll. The family's persistent hope for closure was repeatedly dashed against the wall of ambiguous evidence and uncooperative suspects. The constant reminders of Natalee's absence, amplified by media coverage and public speculation, perpetuated their grief and trauma. Beyond the immediate family, the Holloway case resonated deeply within the community of Mountain Brook, Alabama. Natalee's disappearance shattered the sense of security in this affluent suburb, leaving residents grappling with the realization that such a tragedy could strike even in their seemingly protected environment. The case also fueled public anxiety about the safety of teenagers traveling abroad, particularly on graduation trips, raising questions about the adequacy of supervision and the potential risks lurking in unfamiliar destinations. The pervasive media coverage of the search efforts and subsequent investigations further amplified the community's sense of unease, keeping the tragedy at the forefront of public consciousness for years to come. The ripple effects of Natalee's disappearance extended beyond the local community, capturing national and international attention. The case became a cautionary tale, highlighting the vulnerabilities of young travelers and the challenges faced by law enforcement when investigating crimes that cross international borders. The lack of a definitive resolution fueled speculation and conspiracy theories, further adding to the emotional burden carried by Natalee's family and the broader community. The constant media attention, while raising awareness about the case, also contributed to a sense of collective trauma, as the public became intimately familiar with the details of the tragedy and the ongoing search for answers. The unresolved nature of Natalee Holloway's disappearance continues to cast a long shadow. The absence of closure perpetuates a sense of collective unease, reminding us of the fragility of life and the enduring power of unanswered questions. The emotional toll on Beth Holloway and her family serves as a stark reminder of the devastating impact of such tragedies, underscoring the importance of providing support and resources to those left behind. The case remains a poignant example of how a single event can reverberate through a community and beyond, leaving an enduring legacy of grief, uncertainty, and a persistent yearning for justice. The investigation, initially hampered by jurisdictional issues and the lack of immediate physical evidence, began to gain traction as the Aruban authorities and the FBI collaborated more closely. Joran van der Sloot, the last person seen with Natalee, became the primary suspect. His inconsistent statements, changing alibis, and deceptive behavior raised red flags. While he admitted to leaving Natalee alone on the beach, his accounts of the events leading up to her disappearance varied considerably. The initial searches, focused on land and sea, yielded no results,
intensifying the mystery surrounding Natalee's fate. The pressure mounted on Sloot as the international media descended on Aruba, amplifying the story and demanding answers. This intense scrutiny, coupled with the tireless efforts of investigators, would ultimately lead to a breakthrough, albeit one that wouldn't bring the closure Natalee's family desperately sought. Sloot's attempts to deflect suspicion and mislead investigators became increasingly desperate. He implicated others, providing false leads that ultimately went nowhere. His demeanor, observed by both law enforcement and the media, shifted from apparent concern to evasiveness and outright denial. Despite the lack of a body, the circumstantial evidence against Sloot continued to mount. Witness testimonies placed Natalee with him at the Carlos and Charlie's bar and later in his car. His inconsistent stories about where and when he last saw her, combined with his questionable behavior in the days following her disappearance, painted a damning picture. The turning point came with the discovery of new evidence, although its exact nature remained undisclosed initially. This breakthrough led to Sloot's first arrest in June 2005. The arrest, while a significant development, did not lead to charges being filed immediately. The lack of a body presented a major challenge for the prosecution. Without concrete physical evidence linking Sloot directly to Natalee's disappearance, the case remained complex. The Aruban legal system, different from that of the United States, added another layer of complexity. The standard of proof required for conviction, the rules of evidence, and the procedures for detention and interrogation all played a role in the protracted nature of the investigation. Sloot's release after his initial arrest, while frustrating for Natalee's family and the public, highlighted the difficulties faced by investigators in building a solid case against him. The ongoing investigation, despite the setbacks, continued to uncover pieces of the puzzle. The analysis of digital evidence, including cell phone records and internet activity, provided further insights into Sloot's movements and communications in the days surrounding Natalee's disappearance. The investigators meticulously pieced together a timeline of events, scrutinizing every detail and following every lead. The search for Natalee, however, remained fruitless. Despite extensive searches of the island, the surrounding waters, and even nearby landfill sites, no trace of her was found. The lack of a body continued to be the most significant obstacle in the pursuit of justice for Natalee Holloway. The case slowly transitioned from a missing person investigation to a likely homicide investigation, with the focus shifting towards gathering enough evidence to secure a conviction against the prime suspect. It's a chilling thought, isn't it? That such a vibrant young life could be extinguished so suddenly, so completely, and seemingly without a trace. The Natalee Holloway case underscores the unsettling reality that evil can lurk beneath the surface of seemingly ordinary situations. Joran Sloot, the prime suspect, presented himself as a charming young man, blending in with the crowd of tourists and locals. Yet the evidence suggests a darker side, a capacity for violence that remained hidden until that fateful night. This case serves as a stark reminder that appearances can be deceiving, and that danger can sometimes be found in the most unexpected places. The fact that her body has never been recovered adds another layer of tragedy to this already heartbreaking story. It leaves the family without closure, forever searching for answers that may never come. Absolutely. The psychological impact of this kind of ambiguity is immense. Not knowing what truly happened to Natalee, not having a place to grieve properly, perpetuates the pain and suffering for her loved ones. And the fact that Sloot has never fully confessed or revealed the location of her remains adds to the cruelty of the situation. He's maintained a shifting narrative over the years, offering various explanations and then retracting them, further tormenting the Holloway family. This case highlights the limitations of our justice system. Even when substantial circumstantial evidence points towards a particular individual, it's a frustrating and deeply unsettling realization. We're left with so many unanswered questions. What truly transpired that night? Where are Natalee's remains? And how could someone seemingly so ordinary be capable of such a horrific act? It forces us to confront the unsettling possibility that there are individuals among us, perhaps even people we know, who harbor dark secrets and are capable of unimaginable acts. The Natalee Holloway case serves as a cautionary tale, reminding us to be vigilant and aware of our surroundings, but also acknowledging that sometimes tragedy strikes despite our best efforts. It's a difficult truth to accept. The idyllic vacation backdrop of Aruba, the carefree atmosphere of graduation celebrations, all shattered by a single, devastating event. The contrast between the perceived paradise and the horrific reality is jarring and leaves a lingering sense of unease. It makes you wonder, what other darkness lies hidden just beneath the surface of our everyday lives?
Precisely. The case remains a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the unpredictable nature of human behavior. It's a story that continues to haunt us, not just because of the unanswered questions, but because it forces us to confront the uncomfortable reality of evil hidden in plain sight. It challenges our assumptions about safety and trust, leaving us with a lingering sense of vulnerability and a profound sense of sadness for Natalee and her family. The search for justice continues, and perhaps one day, the truth will finally be revealed. But until then, the mystery surrounding Natalee Holloway's disappearance serves as a chilling reminder of the darkness that can exist in the world, even in the most beautiful of places. Thank you for walking with us through the shadows. The story doesn't end here. It lingers, echoing through time, reminding us that the darkest truths often hide in plain sight. Until next time, stay curious and stay vigilant. Goodbye.